Seems fair to me. Fair decision.
Yes, he did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Unacceptable. Kenny Reid.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Thanks so much for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Great to have you aboard. Hope you survived the snowstorm of last weekend. We might talk about that before this half hour is over. But we sure want to thank our friends at the Gatesworth who are hopefully staying warm. They provide support week in and week out. Let's meet the panelists around our table for this edition of Donnybrook, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese from KTRS and beyond. He's Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Ray Hartmann, one of our founders of Donnybrook back in 1987. And from the St. Louis American and STLmag.com, Alvin Reid. And we start with you, Alvin. Thank you so much. The Post-Dispatch did something that the Kansas City Star did not do. We talked last week about how a columnist for the Kansas City Star said that a statewide vote on a possible county-city merger would be a bad idea. Perhaps, ironically, in St. Louis, our major daily had an editorial saying that the statewide vote would be the way to go because voters statewide would be dispassionate and would be able to decide the fate of the city and the county better than those who actually live here and read the Post-Dispatch, presumably. So I was surprised by this stand. How about you?
Well, I should be, but I'm not. I'm not surprised at all. Because, as I said, this is the big fight. This is the big scrap. Everybody's got to choose a side, and all of the powers that be seem to be falling in line with this. The mayor, the county executive, and now the Post-Dispatch. For this to plausibly have a chance, they got to get some votes in St. Louis and St. Louis County and the region that the Post covers. So they're trying to get whatever support they can in this part of the city. It'll backfire. It will. This will be one of the biggest mistakes that they ever made because when it loses, now you got to go back and look at all these people and said like, what was that about? So, no, I'm not surprised at all.
I was surprised. You know, I think that one could make a good argument that this would be good for the city, that the city's in trouble and merging with the county would be a good thing. But to open it up to a statewide vote and for the Post-Dispatch editorial to kind of call upon the wisdom of the outstaters, you know, who can look at this with new eyes, I thought, you gotta be kidding. I was taken back.
Yeah, I was too. I was completely stunned, absolutely stunned, because no matter, at the end of the day, as they like to say, no matter what we say about the Post-Dispatch, you know, it's the paper of record, I think, of the Post-Dispatch editorial board as being the gatekeeper. I mean, truly, the gatekeeper. I would think they would be the most vocal about this and really saying, this is ridiculous. You're not going to tell us, those of us who actually live here and reside in this community, how, I mean, it was stunning.
I wasn't, it's stunning. I'm with Alvin partly in that it was stunning, but not surprising, if that's at the same time, because it reminded me a lot of how they drank the Kool-Aid on the stadium issues, and for the same, you know, that the powers that be make a decision and all rationality is lost. I think the most significant part of this is not how it's going to impact people in St. Louis, because I don't think it's going to change any minds, but I think what it will be very valuable to Rex Singfield and those pushing it, and I think you underestimate this, Alvin, is it'll be much like endorsements are used by politicians. It will be very persuasive piece of the argument outstate, which is where the vote is counting, because they're going to say the St. Louis Post-Dispatch itself has done this, and that will be a big piece of their argument.
I think you're elevating this when you think that the people outstate are going to go, oh, the Post-Dispatch likes it. This is going to be sold as this is what happened in Michigan. The people of Detroit who couldn't govern themselves went bankrupt, and the hard-working people of Michigan had to bail them out. And it's going to be very nasty. It's going to be those people in St. Louis.
We're both right. To bolster that argument. The Post could be used. The Post affirmation could be used to bolster the argument you're making.
They're
Well,
not.
but the
Our
Post- in
positions
other
are not
words-
mutually exclusive.
Well,
Right.
this is the same Post-Dispatch that endorsed Hillary Clinton, every Democratic president going back to Bill Clinton, trashes President Trump every chance they get. Now, and I'm not saying that it does that, but this is the perspective of a lot of people in this region and outside of here. So now we're going to listen to the Post, even though we don't listen to the Post. I'm telling you,
No,
they
I'm
made a
just-
mistake.
Well,
I'm
you know,
just saying that-
I don't think the Post, when people outstate decided that St. Louis should no longer have a minimum wage. Remember, that was reversed by the General Assembly outstate. I don't think that the Post-Dispatch said, oh, that's a good dispassionate look at the minimum
But
wage
now
in
the
St.
General
Louis.
Assembly did that. That
Right,
was
well,
not
that's
like the
still
people,
outstate
because the-
lawmakers.
Right.
Yeah. And I would also say, it was interesting when I heard Lyda Crewson, the mayor of the city, with Don Marsh today on KWMU, St. Louis Public Radio, and he said to her, well, what if the state approves the merger, but it's opposed by the city and the county? And she said, well, that could happen. And, you know, she wasn't against it. And Vervis Jones has said that that's kind of an impeachable offense for both the mayor and the county executive.
I mean, I
to
agree.
go. I do agree with that as well.
I actually agree too.
And
with
the
Vernon.
thing about it is, if it were enabling legislation, in other words, if it were a statewide vote to enable people here, and I don't even know if they need to vote, that would be an
Right.
entirely different discussion. And I would actually be fine with that. But the idea is.
Or, Ray,
but
how about
I'm
if you had
telling you,
if you
they're
had the
gonna-
referendum in the city and the county first, and if it was approved, then go to the statewide vote?
Yeah, well, either way, but
Well, then
the idea of
outstate would probably say no. If they thought that St.
Well,
Louis
probably.
and St. Louis County wanted it, outstate
Okay.
would probably say no.
No.
All right, let's move on for the time being anyway, and move to you, Bill, where in Warren County, one school district has voted to go to a 4-day week. Now, I think that's a crazy idea because in some advanced countries now where education is off the charts, they're actually going to a 6-day week. And I think you tend to be good at things you do a lot, but the kids there are going to go to school Tuesday through Friday with an extra 33 minutes a day of classroom instruction. What do you think?
Well, I don't like it. I know I read the story and it said that the superintendent says this is really to retain teachers. And I heard your show on it, Charlie, and I really liked that listener who said, well, Mr. Brennan, you only are on 4 days a week. I thought, I liked that listener, and so I would remind you of that. But I think that it should be 5 days a week, and I think that kids shouldn't go back to school until after Labor Day, and I don't like the idea of 4-day weeks.
Well, I know that most of these teachers are leaving for Wentzville, and so and they're obviously leaving for more money. And I feel for the school board, I really do, because how are they supposed to react to this? They don't have the tax dollars. But if you're a parent, I'm concerned that test scores are really important, and things are getting, as you said, Charlie, more competitive, not less competitive. And I mean, you don't have to be an educational expert to see that this is not, I don't think this is going to help things.
If you're a parent in that district, do you have a 4-day-a-week job? What does that do to the people?
Well, they still are going to have the breakfast and the lunches,
and the kids
are
can go to
going
school,
to be
Supervision, but not instruction.
And the
Got it.
superintendent, to give him credit, I mean, he
see that
said the
part,
important thing is teachers, good teachers, and this is the only way we can retain
And I
them.
do sympathize with the fact that they have
Now,
a
I worked a 4-day week at USA Today Baseball Weekly. But, we worked 2 12-hour days. Sunday and Monday was 12 hours, and then you had on 37 and a half, you had in the teens over 2 days. The 4th day, really that 3rd day of your 4-day week was kind of like a down day, and then you did more that 4th day. School doesn't work like that. You can't, I think, boy, by the second half of that 4th day, I think you're going to have some worn out teachers and some worn out kids. But I will say this, I'm much more, if we're going to get into the experiment of how to do school better, let's give them a chance, because this could work.
Well, here's the thing, though, Alvin. They're not doing it because they're hoping that the grades are going to go up. That's not mentioned. They're not saying it's going to improve test scores.
No, I understand.
And already their average ACT average is 19, which is below statewide average, which is below national average.
Yeah, I know.
So I just don't, I think we're shortchanging the kids. And if they have a local problem, then this is something that's got to be addressed by Jefferson City. If you've got rural school districts that are not making it, then you've got to have a school formula that funds teachers for 5 days a week.
No, you need to merge those communities together. That's what you need to do.
Actually, you need to fund public education more than
Unit
40
education.
Well, it's
Yeah.
back to the whole revenue argument that I'm making for years. If you don't have enough, this is what you get when you're 40-something in support of education. Simple as that.
Ray, I think you were with Kit Bond when he saved the Wainwright building in downtown St.
I
Louis,
think it's
weren't
one of
you?
his lasting serious achievements. It was a very cool thing.
Louis Sullivan Building, sometimes
Yes.
considered the first skyscraper
Right.
in America, and that's where about 7 employees from the Missouri Department of Revenue have been working. But they had proposed, because of security reasons, they fear for their lives when they walk to Metrolink or the parking garage, and so they wanted to move to Clayton. Now, the governor put the kibosh on that. They're not going to be moving from the Wainwright Building to Clayton, but they were afraid to be working in downtown St. Louis at 7th and Chestnut.
Then maybe they should find another job. I mean, good for the governor, and I'm not expecting to keep saying that, but he did the absolutely right thing. First of all, downtown St. Louis, we understand we all talk almost every week about crime problems, but downtown St. Louis, it's just an absurd fear. If they feel the way they feel, then they can find another job. But no, absolutely not. And I think, seriously, Kit should be proud that the Wainwright building is a model that I wish a lot of other had been used. We wouldn't have a Gateway Mall disaster and some of the others if that model of historic preservation that the state did in the 70s, which is still going strong today. There's nothing wrong with that building, and I think that absolutely they should stay there.
Well, you know, I think that you're downplaying what a lot of people feel in downtown St. Louis. A colleague of my wife's witnessed a murder outside the bank, and she had to move out. And, you know, Mike Arnold, the owner of Gus Fun Bus, was killed outside this building this past summer, and people are freaking out. I mean, I went to the U.S. Bank across the street from my office in December, and it said we're closed due to an emergency. Turns out someone was shot there, and, you know, it's a real issue.
It is, but the offices of state government legally are in this building, and this is where the jobs are. And across America, there are state employees that work in places that I guarantee you are a lot crazier than downtown St. Louis, but that's where the job is, and that's what your responsibility is. It's just like anything, and then this is all of us in the public sector, we've all had probably some job like Danville, Spring, wherever, you know, like, we're just like, hey, I'm working my way out of here. I'm not just going to go in and say, like, I can't live here. So why should they get to do
Right,
that?
and it is a problem, and the state should be helping. And you help by having more people on the streets, not emptying the streets of downtown.
And the police chief, we just talked a couple of weeks ago about the police chief talking, and I was supportive of him, adding patrols downtown. He made it a point about that, and I think that's a reasonable answer. But giving up on downtown St. Louis is not an option.
The optics of the state essentially declaring, you know, that the city is under siege and cannot even, we cannot abide anything that's happening there, and hightailing it out to the county, that's not anything that the governor can allow.
You know, but it's at a crisis. I mean, we have close to 200 murders in a city of 300,000, and I visited some friends in San Francisco this past weekend, population 900,000, and last year they had 45. I think the four of you are just becoming inured to the violence that is in downtown St. Louis.
No, I'm totally not. What I'm saying is, hey, you got to live amongst all the violence in the city of St. Louis. That's part of it. If you don't want the job and you don't want to work there, then we'll find somebody
Then
who
get
does.
another job.
I'm not ignoring what goes on down there. I'm just saying, like, look, this is where these offices are, and they're going to stay here because what is I mean, I'm not even saying what the alternative is. You know, it's just basically, these are where the state offices are, and we're not moving them.
If we're better together and regional, what's the difference, Clayton or downtown?
Well,
Yeah. By the
think-
way, San Francisco loses its mind when they hit double digits, because I've been out there. When they hit 10, they register that. When does it happen in the year? And they start pulling their hair out there.
There's still a lot of people working downtown. I think you're
Myself included,
Yes,
yeah.
I mean,
But I
let's
have
not
parking
paint-
that's attached.
We understand. No, as I
So
say,
is
I
theirs,
support
isn't
the
it?
chief doing more, putting a little more commitment of resources there. But this idea that we're just going to feed
right.
this narrative that that you're in dire, fear of your life every day downtown is really not accurate.
Okay, we'll take calls on that, I'm sure. Wendy, I want to ask you about dogs in the Capitol. Story this week that dogs are going to be banned in Jefferson City. So lawmakers, I think at least in the state Senate, I think the House as well, because Maria Chappelle-Nadell, is she in the House or is she in the Senate now?
I thought she was in the
House.
Senate.
She's
in
now
the
in the
House.
House.
She's now in the House.
She
Okay.
was in the Senate.
She won't be allowed to bring her favorite canine. And I agree with her on this one. I don't agree with her on everything, but I think as long as you're reasonable, you should be allowed to bring a dog to the office. It might calm things down. What do you think?
This is the kind of thing that makes me feel like Grandma Moses. I mean, honestly, I feel like I am. I feel like life is a movie with subtitles that I just don't understand. Your dog is your dog. I don't think you should have I don't think when you're having, when you're doing your job, you also shouldn't have your grandmother come in and make you sandwiches. You shouldn't have manicures. Whatever. I agree with those who believe that it creates an unnecessary distraction. Your dog belongs. I don't think it's good for the dogs. Barking dogs doing what dogs do. So I mean, it's just like it just no.
I agree. And I think
I love my dog before you call
right.
or burn me in effigy. I love my dog.
Right. And Riley, if you hear me, I love you. Don't
I
dial
love
the phone.
my doggy.
Okay, I think he could do it. Right. But I mean, what do you say? Like, hey, Scooby, should I throw these people off the health benefits?
Right,
like, wait a
right.
minute. I don't want to hear that.
Barking dogs.
Right. If you do get through your legislature, hey, I have some important business to discuss you, and dogs are barking in the background. It's like you're saying you're not taking me seriously.
Oh, come on. I mean, first of all, it wouldn't be a bad thing to distract the legislators. I mean, when you look at the stuff they've done over the years.
Yeah.
But, I think that dogs make a place homier and friendlier. And
Bill, get an aquarium.
In somebody's
Fish
office.
are not going to bark.
No, the
Fish do
fish
not
aren't allowed
bring
either.
fleet-
The fish aren't allowed either.
Okay, whatever.
Or cats. Or birds.
Get a stress ball or something, but don't bring
Wait,
your dog.
how about we go back to the next subject? Get another job.
Yeah.
Actually, though, I see we're all dog lovers. I've got Moji at home. And we're all dog lovers. And as a dog lover, I think it's a little unfair to the dogs to be surrounded by legislators. But I mean, you got to think there. So, but I'm kind of with Bill. I didn't realize you could bring them before, but assuming I haven't heard one time where it was a terrible issue. I mean, I think that I think that I would certainly be quicker. I can't believe they haven't officially banned smoking yet in the legislature. They're still talking about that. I think having dogs in the which I don't recall that much from when I was there, but that was a long time ago. But I just don't see if they've been doing it. It hasn't. When has it been a big issue?
And guns. I mean, they should allow guns there. I mean, that's always talked about. I mean, as long as they want guns everywhere else, I think there ought to be guns in the Capitol.
Well, Bill, speaking of the General Assembly, what do you think about the moves to allow lawmakers not to share their texts or their emails? There are some who say that when the Clean Missouri Amendment was passed in early November, that was the voters saying that they wanted to see the emails and the texts of lawmakers. Actually, there are a lot of things in that amendment, but I guess in its wisdom, the General Assembly decided this week that it'll allow lawmakers to exclude those emails from the views of others.
Well, as a newspaper person, I'm a big fan of everything being in the open and transparency. The only little problem I have with emails from constituents to legislators is if you're a powerful person, you can call your legislator and he or she will take your call, and that's private. If you're not an important person and you're writing for a request, you have to put it in writing. And if the powerful person gets to do it privately, I'm not sure that the ordinary citizen shouldn't. But overall, the more that's in the open, the better off we are, I think.
Agreed. And I guess I'm kind of like just a little more purist than you are, Bill, but I think that if you write to your legislator that's public information. And I think what happened would be like, okay, I might ask we need a stop sign at a certain place in my neighborhood. Please help us accomplish this feat. And then, King Rex sends one to somebody like either get behind this or get another job. Right? That seems to be popular today. Right. And they'll, if we pick it and choose and, the highway would, or the stop sign one goes out, but you know that one nobody gets to see it. So somehow it's better if they're all out.
Go
there.
ahead, go
No,
ahead.
you go ahead.
One of the lawmakers from Kansas City who was quoted in the story said, we can't continue to do this kind of thing if the voters just said they want more transparency. And now we're changing the rules so that we don't have to be transparent. And I just can't believe we're back here again, that Jefferson City is overturning the will of the voters.
Well,
Why do we bother voting?
We were about to go at the same time and say the same thing, but there's an overarching principle here. We had Clean Missouri wasn't meant as a gentle suggestion that voters were asking the legislators to stop being taken out by lobbyists and stop. And you could say, well, every voter didn't know everything in the thing, but the bottom line is they already. I guess they ought to all wear like dirty Missouri T-shirts. I mean, they're already like overturning the lobbying rules. They want to overturn the Sunshine Law rules, and we can debate them. The voters just did
but
it.
Here's the thing
This
with that,
doesn't make
Ray,
sense
and I
to
think
me.
you would agree. There were too many. I mean, looking back, even though you may have agreed with much of that amendment, maybe all of it, there were too many disparate items on there. They had redistricting. They had lobbyist donations. They had what you could do after you leave office. And they had transparency, open government. And I honestly don't believe most people thought that their emails to lawmakers would be, in Bill McClellan's column or Alvin Reid's column or your column. I don't think people were expecting
Well, then
that.
they have
But
to
it
take the
passed.
steps. They have to take the steps to come forth and say, like, I really don't think that this part should be in, or let's vote it in, or let's vote it out, or maybe look. The legislators didn't even give it time for people to even come to them and say, like, please change this.
Well, that's true.
They just
I agree
changed
there,
it.
but-
That's not transparency.
Yeah, but don't you think that Millie and Afton, if she's got a health issue and she's sharing that with a lawmaker and, for a professional reason, it doesn't need to be out there for everybody?
Well, I'm not sure how we're going to misuse that if Millie from Afton has a health issue.
You better have some good libel insurance if you're like doing it. I mean, my point is this: I'm more concerned. I think they're more concerned about protecting their communications
absolutely.
outbound,
Right.
and
right.
I think that they ought to abide by the will of the people and not try to pick apart what the people meant.
Okay, Wendy, Kevin Steincross, longtime Channel 2 anchor and movie reviewer, said something this morning for which he immediately apologized. When he was referring to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he substituted coon for king. And then he apologized. Now people are wondering what should happen to him. What do you think is going to happen to Kevin Steincross of Channel 2?
Well, having done this for 36 years and made more mistakes than the average bear myself, I could see where, in light of what happened in Rochester, New York, with the meteorologist who lost his job
For the same thing.
for the same exact phrase, where an anchor who really is trying to be as vigilant as he possibly can be and thinking, don't say this, don't slip, don't say this, that he would almost guarantee that he might slip and say it. We're all human. Everybody's a human being. I don't know anything about the anchor in Rochester, New York. I don't really know anything about Kevin Steincross except his work, and he seems to be a nice enough man. It's very hard for me to believe that he's a racist or a card-carrying racist, but I hope that people can forgive him if he asks to be forgiven, if it was a slip.
Somewhat commonly used term when I was growing up and even into my young adult. So he may have heard that before. I don't know. And plus this happened right kind of before we came on, so I haven't even read the entire story. I will say this, that it happened in Rochester. Honestly, when people were talking about it, when we first brought it up, I said, like, what, we're talking about the guy in Rochester? Like, no, this happened today. I didn't realize. All of you, everybody out there, don't think about elephants for the next 30 seconds. Well, guess what you're going to think about. Well, guess what you're thinking about right now.
Right.
Well, I don't. It's hard for me to think of it as a slip. I mean, that just doesn't. It just doesn't seem like a sub. We all, like I say, I said something stupid earlier on the show, but that kind of, I just don't think of it as a slip. As far as what's going to happen to him, the station, I believe, the Tribune Company already said nothing, but that's only as.
But to say it's not
if you want a prediction,
but to say it's not a slip is implying that he did that deliberately.
It's just a strange slip.
Ray,
And
who would
I'm
do
not
it?
calling him to believe.
Knowing the guy in
Rochester
Rochester was fired, why would he?
Well, like I say,
purposely?
well, as far as what's going to happen, it will be if they get a big advertiser outcry, he'll get fired. If he doesn't, he doesn't. I'm so sick of this whole
That's
should
a
they
good
be
point,
fired.
though.
I'm not
That is
going to
an
go
excellent
there.
point.
I'm
It
not.
won't be
I'm
me
not.
or you.
It
It'll
ain't
be-
exactly, and I'm not
Yeah.
advocating anything. I'm tired of that whole every time somebody does something
Yeah,
stupid, they
well,
get fired thing.
And I think Wendy and Alvin have it right that if it just happened in Rochester and he was probably thinking about it, I can't say this, and said it. I mean,
Well,
it's
they may,
awful,
I'm
but-
not saying. I'm just saying
And I
it's a
don't know the guy.
strange slip. Let's
It
put
is
that way.
strange. Yeah, it
And
is.
I'm not calling him anything. I don't know anything about the guy.
Well, to
I
be
mean, I'm not-
continued. Hey, let's see what the viewers had to say about last week's program. We heard from Robert Rushing. I'm not a big fan of the city-county merger. I don't want anyone outside the area to decide for us. However, if we do this, it should be a complete merger, one police department, one fire department, one school system. Thank you, Robert. We also heard from Jake Lapert of Chesterfield. Alvin, the NBA will work in St. Louis because fans will go to the games? That is not how it works. Without the corporations propping up professional sports franchises, they cannot be successful. You can write us care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street Boulevard, St. Louis, Missouri. And don't forget, letters at ketc.org, as well as those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL. And you can catch Donnybrook on these. Apple, we got you on Spotify, Google Play, TuneIn, the podcasts, 24/7. Hey, don't forget those tweets, as I said, because Wendy's going to read them in just a matter of moments on your turn. I'll be her faithful assistant. Everybody else will see you next week at this time. Thanks so much for joining us, but don't touch that dial.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Welcome. It is your turn, and I will be co-piloting with our pilot this evening, Charlie Brennan, and we had a great conversation and can't wait to hear what you think.
Starting with John in St. Louis County. Hi, John.
Oh, good evening. And, by the way, there's a linguist who was in the news during the upstate New York situation who pointed out, and I'm trying to Google it right now, and anybody can look it up. It's a plausible explanation. He pointed out that the word junior leads to the other word somehow with the brain, and I'll leave it at that.
Oh, okay.
But they fired him anyway. They fired him anyway, correct?
Well,
yeah.
Well, it probably happened before. And these are reasonable people. I haven't researched it completely, but anybody can look it up and see what they think, because at the time it was considered a plausible explanation for what they knew about linguists then, and maybe they know even more now about the brain.
Yep.
Well, I'll tell you what, I honestly believe, Wendy, you had the best remarks because you talked about your 36 years, and
then you've been doing it for 50 or 60.
75.
So, yeah.
But I've made so many blunders, as you all know. So I'm...
and it's when you're trying hard not to. You know, for whatever, I'm not you specifically, the universal you. I think it's when we're trying so hard because we don't, and it is like, don't touch the stove, and so you touch the stove. So thank you, John.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Let's go to Kathy in St. Louis County. Hi, Kathy. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Wendy and Charlie.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Fine, thank you.
Oh, good. Thanks for taking my call. I'm calling about the 4-day school week. I am wondering whether or not the people or the legislators in Jefferson City, do they get on a bus to see what's going on around the state? Because we can see at the college level the kids are taking remedial classes, and they're appropriating all this money. I'm wondering how many lobbyists are up there lobbying for all this money and where it's going and how, is it doing any good? Who is in the classroom? I had heard recently this week on the radio that actually a lot of companies now are not necessarily looking to the person who has the master's and the bachelor and the PhD and everything. They're looking for people that have the ability to do the job. So what is going on in the schools? I don't know. The teachers just are kind of baffled, when the parents come in and want to change the grades on the kids' papers and stuff. And, the superintendent kind of goes along, and then the teacher is called up, and I'm thinking, what the heck's going on here?
Thanks, Kathy. Your idea that the lawmakers should get on a bus is a good one. I do believe the freshman lawmakers did just come back from a statewide tour on a bus. I talked to Steve Butts, who's a new state representative from South St. Louis, and he was on one of those. So, but that'd be a really good idea, and maybe the lawmakers should be sitting in some of these classrooms. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hey, let's go to Nancy. Hi, Nancy. What do you say?
Hey, Nancy. Hi, Charlie. Hi, Wendy. Thanks
Hi there.
for taking my call. I just wanted to express my support for Kevin Steincross. I know him on a professional level, not a personal level, but I have every confidence and know in my heart that it was a total slip of the tongue. He's a great guy. I am totally confident no malice was intended whatsoever.
He doesn't look like the type of guy who'd be pulling a prank or trying to sneak one over.
No,
He
he's
really
not.
doesn't.
He's not a flamethrower. He's not somebody who has made a profession of saying inflammatory things. So that's
what we do. For a living.
That's what
that's our act.
He's a straight-up guy. He's totally professional. I feel bad for him that it happened. But you know what? As you all have said earlier today and just now, everybody makes mistakes and slips of the tongue, particularly when you're in broadcast. You can't help it. It just happens. Yeah.
Nancy,
So,
did you
anyway,
work?
he's a
Did you
great
work
guy.
at Channel 2?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Very well. Thank you.
He was going to ask you your social security number next, but
And home address.
and
No,
home
I thought
address.
maybe this was a broadcaster that we would out on the radio.
She would not
or
let
television.
us out her. I don't think. But maybe Crystal will. Hi, Crystal. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, Charlie. How are you guys
Hi,
doing?
Crystal.
And
Great.
thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I want to speak about the 4-day school week. There's 25 other counties that have established this, and I wanted to know how it's been working for them, number one. I understand your concerns. I think, Charlie, you mentioned that the scores are already not the best, and what are we going to do not to have the children in school? At the same time, we have to look at what's best for the teachers, too. If the teachers are leaving and going over to another county, and you don't have the money to provide for those teachers, that incentive for them to stay with that 4-day work week may be, the best call. But I was curious as to how the other 25 counties that are doing it, how it has it worked for them, and furthermore, the older students. Sometimes, there's maybe the older students may need to work on Mondays. Financially, the family may have some type of family hardship, and sometimes the high school students work during that time too. So I'm trying to look at it in both angles. My husband and I were discussing it, and I just want to know what your thoughts about it, because I'm looking at it in both the teachers having to keep the good teachers. You want them on board. You don't want them to leave in droves. And how is the other counties faring that have adopted this program of 4 days a week?
Fair point. Executive producer Chris Myhill and I did a cursory search of some of the districts which have gone to 4-day week, and we noticed that there were none that we found that were leading the state in all categories. Social studies, history, English, math. Didn't find one. In fact, they were lagging in SAT scores and in other breakdowns in many occasions. But I think the thing is this. When we start seeing the schools with the most excellent outcomes, let's say a SLU High or Kirkwood, if they start moving to a 4-day week, then okay, fine, maybe that's the way to go academically because that's best for the kids. But I don't think they're doing that. I think, as a matter of fact, the top kids in the state are probably going 5.5 because they spend that Saturday at Kumon or Sylvan or somewhere else. So if the teachers need more money, I think we should find more money to pay the teachers so those kids get a 5-day-a-week education.
And I hate to say this, but if money is the deciding factor, then I don't know that teachers are going to really be swayed or wooed, if you will, by working 1 day less. You know, if they've got a guarantee of more money, then that's going to maybe trump the workload. And I'm like Charlie. I haven't even done a cursory search in terms of how it's faring elsewhere. But it does seem that if it comes down to that, money's going to win the day. But thank you, Crystal, for the phone call.
Okay, let's go to those tweets. Thank you so much for tweeting, Craig Riggins. I'm one who favors a merger. However, I'm not in favor of the statewide process. If any merger plan is serious, it would start with the merger of the public school districts. The centerpiece of the statewide plan is law enforcement instead of education. Thanks, Craig.
At Mike BK2, since when is the Post-Dispatch editorial board the mouthpiece of St. Louis? Who cares what they think? This is the same outfit that endorsed Steve Stenger. Thank you, at Mike.
And we heard from Sister Sarah 23. I like the idea of a shorter week, but it doesn't seem like a good idea. It would be squeezing more information in a smaller time frame and would increase the stress on teachers. Teachers are stressed enough trying to cover all the material in 5 days. Thank you so much. Don't forget, hashtag Donnybrook STL. Bob?
We have a standoff. Bob.
Sorry.
Bob
I'm here.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, hello, I'm here. 3 items on the city-county merger from the Post-Dispatch coverage of it disqualify it, in my estimation, which is not to say that something has to be done, especially with these multiple things in the county that have to be consolidated, but that's the county's business, not the state's business. Number one, they're talking about spending $25 million on this. Where's the money coming from? Is this going to be dark money from outside the state or not? Number two, they talk about the people who are coming together to do this. They talk about political consultants. That means lobbyists and bag men. You know that. I know that. These people are not doing it for their health.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not enough, they have kept the prime thing for themselves. That's control of development. That's where the money is, and these people are not into it for good government. They know that if they get this on the ballot, the same outstate dimwits who elected Eric Greitens will try to jam this down our throats. Your comments, please.
Thanks, Bob. I just want to say that I believe it's already been reported in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that Rex Singfield will fund that $25 million.
Yes, that is correct. As insofar as the so-called dimwits, I don't have an answer to that. I think that's the lingering question in the minds of so many people, and why the Post-Dispatch editorial was so jarring for people. So.
Okay, Marianne, you're in St. Charles. What do you say?
Hello there.
Hi.
I was interested in talking a little bit about the 4-day school year. I worked for one of the bigger school districts here in St. Louis, and I listen to the teachers and I pay attention to the children in that, and they are having, and just in one subject, just in history, most of the children today don't go beyond the Vietnam War. They have no background. And if you take the time away from, they don't have time enough to do just history. What do you think with all this new stuff we're bringing in, all the different things, science and everything they have to keep up with? I don't see how they're ever going to get much of an education. They need more time, not less. Thank you.
I agree with you.
Well, and if there is the emphasis that we seem to hear that there is on electronics and technology, I think we all have our doubts about how that's impacting critical thinking and whether they're able to actually write, coherently. So yeah, I don't know that this is the best time to be cutting back the time that the kids are spending in the classroom, as Charlie said earlier, Marianne. But thank you for the phone call.
Who's next?
Let's go to Art in Baldwin. Hi, Art. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing fine. Charlie and Wendy, thank you very much for your program. I have two subjects. The first one is I cannot believe that your state legislature would leave the Wainwright building and to move to Clayton. That's telling you something about our security in the city of St. Louis. When in the heck are we going to get our mayor and our chief of police to clean up the problems, the murders in North St. Louis? That's number one. The number two, I cannot believe that our educational system in a county and a city don't go beyond Vietnam. I lost two brothers. Had two brothers in the Second World War, one in the Marines, one in the Army. The one in the Army got hit on Okinawa with a jet bullet, died at the age of 83. Why can't they teach those things about what happened in Pearl Harbor and the rest of the Second World War? Thank you very much, guys. I love your program.
Thank you, Art.
Yeah, they should. There is a move afloat to address crime in the city, and it's largely privately funded, and I think they're going to announce that in 2 weeks, and you'll be hearing more about that from what I understand. Yeah, and it's downtown. And to his credit, I think the chief of police, John Hayden, has zeroed in on downtown as the area he wants to improve for public safety in 2019. And I don't question the mayor's concern. I mean, she's been the victim of horrible crimes in the past.
Yes, she has.
So no one has to preach to her about the problems of crime.
Well, and we've always believed of the downtown St. Louis that we think of our commercial interest there and the businesses and the corporate community. If people are afraid to walk to their car or to go to the bank, then you have a problem like we've never had before. So it's got to be addressed, and so we will all look forward to this announcement in 2 weeks. Thanks, Charlie, for the preview.
Hey, more tweets. We heard from ADMG Prozac. I love it. I substitute by the afternoon. The little guys in K2 are exhausted. We already put incredible pressure on students when it comes to testing. Cram more into every day. Has anyone thought about the kids?
At Joel's Jervin, let's stick with the theme. If Jefferson City legislators can't deal with clean Missouri, it's time for them to find a new job. Thank you, Ed Joel's.
And Joan, I-E-A-C, whatever.
Joni.
Joni, yeah. I agree, no dogs in the workplace. There are some people who are allergic to pets, and how does that help the conversation between the politician and the constituents who come to the office to talk to them? Hey, we'll take more tweets at #DonnyBrookSTL.
First-time caller from Leslie. Mike from Leslie. Yeah. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Wendy, Charlie, I hope you guys and gals are doing good, too. I want to talk about the 4-day school week. There's only one reason that's happening. It's money.
Right.
And nobody can argue that it's not. And as long as somebody can buy a rich house and get a good school, and somebody who doesn't afford a rich house and doesn't get a good school, something's wrong. And it all has to do with, like somebody said earlier, Jefferson City. It's the way the laws are wrote. That really we should have money for schools before we have money for guns and money for all the bad things we do. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and there is a state school funding formula, which is supposed to even out some of the inequities in public spending, but you described it pretty accurately, and we need more money, I'm afraid to say, at the state level to fund some of these school districts if they're going to 4-day weeks.
Well, and we had the tweet and the tweeter wondering if anybody's thinking about the children. I don't doubt that Warren County, that they are thinking about the children. This has to do with nothing but the children. You can't teach children if you don't have those teachers in the classroom. So I do think they're desperate, and I think they're, looking at desperate measures, taking desperate steps. So thank you, Mike.
Now it's Bill in Rock Hill's turn. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill.
It's Old Friends Week.
Good evening. As an obsolete child, nobody cares about kids, but that's not why I called. I wanted to talk about the crime situation downtown. Frankly, I don't think it's any worse downtown than it is anywhere else. I mean, there are areas that are experiencing crime that historically had not experienced it. Case in point, about a week ago over in the business area there in South St. Louis, along Macklin between roughly Devonshire and Nottingham, they had, a robbery down there. And, that is supposedly a thriving, happening area, and you suddenly have a crime down there. And I think the problem is for too many years, people took the attitude as long as all the crime stayed in certain areas, they didn't care. And the crime isn't staying in certain areas because those certain areas are pretty much picked over now, and people are like, well, why would I want to commit crime up here? There's nothing left. Where's there something? And they're going to where the something is. And I think another problem is just the outright disrespect for law enforcement in this area. Whenever something goes wrong with law enforcement, the white liberals and the civil rights people practically want to run the law enforcement out of town. It's like, well, what happens when you need them? And I think in some of the cases, one of my best friends is a retired police officer, and boy, is he glad he's out of there, that he got out when he did, because it's terrible the way, they expect the police officers to do everything, but they don't want to hire enough of them. They don't want to pay them well. And, they wonder why the crime's out of hand. That's why.
Thanks, Bill, for your call. You're right. We have a police officer shortage. It's not just in St. Louis. Seattle has one. Indianapolis has one. So there's that. So we have a police shortage in downtown St. Louis. And you're right. We have more people with money who are living down there. So why did Willie Sutton rob the banks? That's where they are. So you've probably attracted more people to downtown St. Louis for that. And in Kansas City, the transition home, that halfway house between prison and the rest of the world, was shut down, and they moved everybody to just north of Laclede's Landing. And as Nick Pister had once written in the Post-Dispatch, a lot of our crimes in downtown have been committed by these guys. Not the majority of them, but some of the bad apples who've been walking around downtown St. Louis and assaulting people and robbing and carjacking, etc. So the downtown alderman, Jack Coder, has said that the carjackings have just gotten out of control. And how many rock bands have lost their equipment when they park in downtown St. Louis?
They're really, the carjackings are brazen. I mean, these are these are really brazen criminals. And so that's what, we all have to be. I think it's incumbent upon each of us to always be more aware, perhaps, than we used to be. Don't you find that you are more aware when you go into certain places? So thank you very much, Bill, for the call. Let's go to David in Glendale. Hi, David. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook.
Hi, Wendy and Charlie. How you doing?
Fine, good. Thank you.
I want to ask you a question about the merger. Now, if you live in New York City outside of the state, you pay a tax that goes to the city. Oh. So if the county and the city merge, are we going to end up having to pay that 1% city tax to help support the city? So I heard somebody say something about $75 million. That may be where it's coming from.
Anything's possible. I don't know the details. I do know that the measure is backed by Rex Singfield, who made his money as one of the heads of Dimensional Fund Advisors. He invented the index fund in 1973. He hates the earnings tax. And I think a lot of public servants want to do what Rex likes, and so I think they'll try and eliminate that earnings tax. And one theory is he can easily eliminate the earnings tax because the city's laws say the earnings tax is in effect until the charter is changed. And that's what they're going to do with the city-county merger.
And it's almost like every other issue that Mr. Singfield has supported or gotten behind has been leading up to this particular moment in our history. It's really fascinating to watch. David, we thank you for the phone call, and we have to go back to the Twitterverse. We have some more tweets. At HolyStar77, according to PolitiFact, the concern of email disclosures due to Clean Missouri is rather overstated. The Sunshine Law contains provisions for the closure of certain public records that are more sensitive. Thank you, at HolyStar.
Thomas WO55, of course, Kansas City Star is against a statewide vote regarding the St. Louis merger. Kansas City might have a bit of stature to lose if there's a unified powerhouse of St. Louis City and County. You can always tweet us, hashtag Donnybrook STL. Great calls, great tweets this evening.
I take a little bit of a different view than Thomas, but that's for another time. Mary is in O'Fallon. Hi, Mary. Welcome.
Hi. I'm all in favor of the merger with the city and the county. Lived in the city for 20 years, absolutely loved it, but didn't like the politics. I think, though, we need to make sure that the county is going to be the parent and not the child running the school. So I think the county has to make the ruling, and the younger city, the older city, has to kind of conform to that, not the other way around, which I think is the way they want it to go.
I don't think that's okay. Thanks, Mary. I don't think that's going to fly.
And with all the love in the world, note that Mary's in O'Fallon, outside of the city and the county.
Yeah, and that's what she said, that she lived there and moved away. So thank you, Mary.
Hey, Warren, what do you say?
Yeah, I'm calling about you all made comments about crime in downtown St. Louis. Well, I'm 75, and I used to work downtown, and in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and you couldn't walk down the streets because there were so many people. But because of people like our provocateur, people started moving to Crestwood and Riverview and Earth City and Chesterfield, and our downtown looks like it does. But I've lived in different cities, and the first thing they worry about is the crime. But you don't hear them talking about moving out of their downtown. Chicago, Kansas City, Atlanta, they all have crime in them. But we seen in St. Louis dwell on that, and next thing you know, we lose business. There used to be 3 department stores downtown: Dicksbury and Fuller, Famous Bar, and Scruggs. Well, you look at it now. But I'm glad the Cornish company believe in our downtown, because apparently a lot of people kind of trash talk it. That's my comment.
Well, the provocateur has been working in downtown St. Louis since 1988, so there's that. But also, we do have some statistics that we should not be proud of. And in fact, I would recommend everybody pick up a book by Stu Durando of the Post-Dispatch, who's taken a look at gun crimes and gunshot wounds in the city of St. Louis, and it's quite an eye-opener. And when you compare us to other cities and towns, unfortunately, we're worse off than many of them.
We thank you, Warren. I think we have time for Bob in St. Louis. Hi, Bob.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much. Great show as always. Hey, I just wanted to comment on the Clean Missouri initiative, and I'm going to be a little cynical about this. I actually think Clean Missouri initiative is an excellent initiative, and I'm glad the voters voted for it. My concern is that the Republican legislature, elected by a vast majority of voters in the state, is going to completely disregard the will of the people. The Supreme Court may try to make them comply with the will of the people. They're going to defy the Supreme Court, and the Republican supporters are not going to vote them out of office because of this, and they're going to win. And I know it's cynical, but that's how I feel about that issue. Thank you very much.
Yeah, as a Republican, I'm sad to say I think you're right, Bob. We appreciate your phone call.
I think that's it, isn't it?
I think that is it. I don't think we can get to any others. But we thank you all for your wonderful comments and for watching Donnybrook.
Thanks so much.
See you next week.